Oftentimes after a car crash in New Orleans, people will come to us, and certainly we already know that, hey, they've had an injury, they've been to the hospital, they've had an ambulance bill, maybe they've treated with their doctor, etc. We know about those potential costs or those costs that have already been incurred. But often they have questions some months down the road when they've been seeing the doctor and maybe they haven't healed fully. Well, what about my future needs? What about my future medical care? Is that something that I can receive compensation for? And the short answer is yes, the law does provide that if you're injured as a result of somebody else's fault, that person is responsible to compensate you appropriately. And if that injury results in care that you need in the future, that can be taken into account. Now, it's always situationally specific. If you've been hit by somebody who has a state minimum limits policy of $15,000 per person, 30 per accident, and it should be readily apparent that there may not be that much there to recover from in the future to cover that. But if it's a commercial incident where there's plenty of insurance, then yes, absolutely, that's something that needs to be taken into consideration and properly documented. Now, how do we do that? There are experts in the industry, life care planners, that can be assigned to interview your medical team and come up with a care plan. Okay, doctor, as a result of this injury, Mr. Magness suffered this. What does it look like in the future for him? What do you believe he's going to need, whether it be surgery, whether it be physical therapy, whether it be interventional pain management? What prescriptions? Does he need home health care? Does he need modifications to his home to be able to have access to it? A wheelchair ramp, widened door? All those things can be taken into consideration based on those interviews with your healthcare team. That expert then prepares a report and can obtain cost data. They can research costs for the specific medical procedures and treatment. They can research costs from contractors on how much it's going to cost to modify your house to live in now as a result of this crash, if you need accessibility modifications to your home. All of that can be compiled into a report, and we can present that to the other side for consideration for compensation for future care and needs. Again, on a case-by-case basis. You're not going to go through all that work if the only insurance available is $15,000, $25,000, maybe even $50,000. But if you start to get into some of these commercial policies and your injuries warrant it, then potentially that's something that can be explored by the attorney. Certainly in our office, we're going to be aware of those issues and make sure that if the case warrants it, that is properly worked up so we can ensure that those clients' future needs are addressed in the best way possible. Outside of the other person's insurance, certainly if you have uninsured and underinsured motorists under your own policy, that's something that can be taken into consideration too. Again, what the limits are they sufficient to warrant that type of workup and cost and expense, and retaining those experts, going through those interviews and properly documenting what your future care would be. All things that take into consideration. Certainly if a client has what we call an umbrella policy with higher limits, every now and then we'll have somebody come in and they may have $1 or $2 million of uninsured motorists applicable to them. Well, then that puts them in the best case scenario to provide for potential future care if their injury warrants that. But we've also had people come in and they contact us. They say, look, I had an accident. I went to my doctor. I was contacted by the insurance company. They threw a quick $2,500, $5,000 at me. I accepted it. But now I've gone back to the doctor and I'm continuing to have issues, and my doctor said I'm going to need help in the future. What can I do? And I have to unfortunately advise that individual, if you settled your claim, that's it. There's no more. You have one shot to get it right. If you decided to take that quick buck that they put on the table, and there's a reason why they do that, they put it on the table very quickly. They try and get on the front end of any symptoms developing, seeking counsel with somebody like myself who can properly advise them of things to think about and look for. Once you accept that settlement, that's it. No more. You can't go back. You can't unring that bell and seek to recover additional money from that driver or their insurance company. So if you've been in a crash in New Orleans and you have questions about your claim, your medical care, the potential for you to seek recovery for future medical care, if that's something you need, feel free to contact our office, give us a call, shoot us a text, send us an email. We'll do everything that we can to help.